Today I want to give you 15 settings that you should check, 15 things that you should check over on your camera or on a shoot before you hit that record button. By the way, my name is Owen. If you're happening on this channel for the first time, welcome. Now, there's nothing that can be more distressing than returning from a shoot, with your footage, very important shoot. You take it home, you get it into your editor, you're looking it over, and you realize that something was off. Something was off with the video, or maybe something was off with the audio. Nothing can mess up your day like that. So today, I want to give you 15 things you should check over, 15 settings probably that you should check before you hit that record button. Number one, always ensure that your battery is full. Nothing can mess up, nothing will cause you more stress than having a low battery. You're in a position where you may not be able to switch batteries during the shoot, just because of the situation, just because of the event that you might be shooting, right? It would not be advisable to stop the camera to change your battery, but the battery is dying and you have no alternative but to do it. Nothing will cause you more stress than running out of battery power in the middle of a long shoot. That's number one. Number two, which is almost as stressful, check your SD cards before you start rolling. Always check the capacity on your SD cards before you start rolling. This is another thing that will cause you a lot of stress. You're in the middle of a shoot, you look at the capacity on your SD card and you realize that, whoa, this SD card will not be able to finish this shoot. You're going to run out of card space before this shoot is over. Now, if it's a situation where you're running dual cameras, you're running a side shot and your main shot, right? And the card from the main camera is running low. Having a side angle to kind of keep going while you change the card in your main camera, that's fine. But what if you're running just a single camera? You're doing an interview, you're shooting a wedding, you're in the middle of the first dance or the kiss, you having to stop an interview just to change an SD card or something like that can be very embarrassing. It makes you look unprofessional. It makes you look unprepared. So always check your SD cards. Ensure that you have a fully formatted SD card with enough capacity on it to get you going for the duration of the shoot that you're hired to do. All right, so that was number two. Number three, always check your resolution and frame rate. Always ensure that you're shooting in the intended resolution. If it's 1080p, ensure it's 1080p. If it's 4K or 8K, always make sure that you're shooting in the correct resolution. And not only that, ensure that you're in the correct frame rate. Don't be shooting something at 60 frames a second when you actually intended, your intention was to shoot at 24 frames a second. You understand? Because, you may have problem with the edit. 60 frames a second is much different from 24 frames a second. All right, that's a huge discrepancy there. So always check your resolution and your frame rate. Point number four. A lot of filmmakers, videographers tend to shoot in auto ISO these days. But you know, sometimes you want to lock down your ISO, you want to lock down your exposure, right? And so sometimes it's a good habit to shoot in manual ISO. You know, you set your ISO levels based on your lighting situations. It's better to do that. So always check your ISO before you start rolling camera. Number 5, check your white balance. Check your white balance. You do not want to get home and, you know, the footage, you know, in camera, you know, the footage look one way. When you put it in your editor, it's looking another way. You know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, if you're using natural light, or, you know, you're shooting in an environment where the lighting situation is, it's varying, if you know what I mean. It changes slightly. It's better to shoot in, in manual white balance. Manual white balance ensures that colors are more true to life. Whites are whites, blacks are blacks, and all the colors in between are accurate. So always check your white balance before you start rolling camera. All right. Another thing you should check, and this is what, point number 6. Point number 6, always check your shutter speed. You know, if you understand the 180-degree rule, you know, that can, you know, if your camera has that feature, then it's all good. But if not, always check your shutter speed. For example, if you're shooting at 30 frames a second, then your shutter speed should be 1/60 or 60. What I mean is that your shutter speed should always be twice your frame rate or close to it, right? Shutter speed should always be twice your frame rate. So always check your shutter speed before you start rolling. Okay? Number 7, check your f-stop. There are times when you would like to have everything in focus, you know, everything in focus. If you're new to this and you don't, you're not sure what f-stop means. F-stop basically means how big the opening in the camera lens is at a specific time. Depending on the lighting situation, you may want to open up that aperture more, or shoot at a lower f-stop, or you may want to close it down, and shoot at a higher f-stop. You understand? A higher f-stop means a smaller aperture, right? A lower f-stop number means a bigger opening. It's kind of antiquated. They're opposites. But what I'm saying, there are times when you'd like to shoot something, or you intend to shoot something with everything in focus. So that would require you to shoot at a higher f-stop number. Now, if you want to shoot, if you want to blur the background, then you're going to be shooting at a lower f-stop number. All right. So depending on what your intention is, always check your f-stop or your aperture before you start rolling camera. All right. Number 8. And if you're shooting in well, let me back up a bit. Cameras are very good these days when it comes to autofocus. Very good, right? But there are instances where you would prefer to shoot in manual focus instead of autofocus, right? Because you never know. For whatever reason, the camera may shift focus. When you did not intend. You did not intend for that to happen, right? So over the years, I have learned to shoot in manual focus, right? So I would advise you to check your focusing before you start rolling camera. Check your focusing. If you intend to, essentially what I'm saying, ensure that your subject is in proper focus, whether it's autofocus or manual focus. Ensure that your subject is in proper focus before you start rolling. All right. That was number 8. I'm not sure where I am. I'm losing track here. All right. Number 9. Your tripod. If you're shooting on a tripod, always ensure that your tripod is level. Nothing can look more amateur than you go home, you look at your footage and the horizon is slanted, because your camera was not level. Many cameras nowadays, they do have a level gauge on them, right? Which will, help you to level your camera. Not only that, many tripods, they do have like a bubble level on them, and this will definitely help you to get your camera level at 100%. So never forget to to check, to ensure that your horizon is level or that your camera is level. All right. Always double check that before you start rolling. You do not want to get home with footage that is skewed to one side. Okay. All right. Number 10. Look at your background. Check your background. Check what's behind your subject. For example, if you're shooting an interview, always take a few minutes to check out what's inside the frame. What are the things that are inside the frame are showing up in your monitor that might be distracting to the viewer, that is not adding anything to the shot. It would be best not to have those things there. That's what I'm saying. So always take a few minutes to check behind, to check the scene, to ensure that the scene is clean and devoid of distractions or unintended subjects or unintended stuff that you did not want to be there. All right, let's continue. Number 11. We're talking about cables now, and especially as it relates to your microphone or any other cables that are attached to your camera. Always ensure before you hit record that your microphone cable is attached properly, all other cables are attached properly, and nothing is loose that may cause electrical interference, or you're capturing audio and your audio is all messed up because cables were not seated properly. So always ensure that microphone cables and other cables are connected and seated properly wherever they are connected on your camera before you start rolling. Just take the time to double check. All right, that's number 11. Number 12, always double check your audio levels, whether or not you're using an audio recorder or you are recording straight into your camera. If your camera has a headphone jack, always ensure that the audio coming in is where you want it to be. Ensure that there's no distortion, ensuring that the microphone is not picking up anything that you're going to hear later in the edit that you're just going to have a problem getting out. It could be hums, it could be hissing, that kind of stuff. It's always a good idea to have some kind of monitoring device, especially a headphone, just to ensure that your audio levels are good, number one, and nothing is being recorded that you did not intend to record in terms of audio. So audio levels, all right? That was number 12. Number 13, and this is just like piggybacking on on everything. It's all again about checking audio, but this time, you're gonna, if you have an audio recorder running, you're gonna check the levels on that. Your audio recorder may be connected to a mixing board, so you're gonna check the levels there. You're gonna check the levels coming inside your camera. Just ensure that you have a headphone that you can use to check levels. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but you never know. There's a lot of environmental noises or stuff that one can pick up. So monitor your audio. All right, that was number 13. Number 14. You want to ensure that your phone is turned off, or your ringer is turned down, or it's in airplane mode, so you're not getting all those little ding and notification sounds. Your phone is not going to ring. You're shooting an interview. The interviewer asks a question, and the interviewee is responding, and boom, your phone went off in the middle of the conversation, and they have to stop for you to stop your ringer before that is a little bit amateurish and unprepared. So always ensure before you start rolling that your phone is off. And if you can have other people, well, it depends on what you're doing. It really depends. But if it's an interview or anything in a quiet setting where your microphone is going to pick up sounds from your phone, it's best to have your phone in airplane mode, have your notifications turned off, or the ringer on your phone turned off before you hit that record button. So that's point number 14. And point number 15, if you're going to be shooting handheld and you did not intend for your footage to be jerky, and all over the place and giving people dizziness when they look back at it, just ensure that your camera, the stabilization in your camera is turned on, right? If you're going to be doing handheld shooting. Now, if the intention is to have jerky footage for a certain kind of effect, then it's fine. It's perfectly fine. But if you were thinking of having smooth footage, and then you shoot a whole sequence of stuff, and then you took it home to your editor, and your footage is all jerky and all over the place, then it's not going to look good on you as a videographer or as a filmmaker. So before you hit record, always make sure that your stabilization is on if you intended to have it on. All right? It's never too much work to double check. Okay? Yes. So those are my 15 points. I hope I didn't miss anything. Those are my 15 points in terms of things that you should check before you start recording. 15 things you should check before you hit that record button. And just as an added bonus, I'm gonna add another one. If the camera has a tally light, or a red frame around the screen, just ensure that those were turned on before you start rolling. So at least you have a little visual that your camera is actually rolling. I've had instances in the past where I was hired to shoot something. I thought I hit record, and when in fact I didn't. I did not depress the button enough, and so the camera was not rolling. And by the time I realized, I have lost a lot of footage. I have lost a lot of footage that I would have captured. I have lost it. All right. So I just thought I would share these 15 points with you today. I think they will save you a lot of stress and headache when you go back home to the edit. If you find them helpful, give me a thumbs up, and if you find the channel helpful overall, don't forget to subscribe. All right, so until the next video, you take care of yourself, and happy shooting. All right, thank you for watching.